Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we've got a news story for you. It's about a night out in Patong that took an unexpected turn when what was supposed to be a fun adventure led to a sobering reality check. Stay tuned to find out how one wild night became a chase to get back what was lost. Before we dive into today's story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to help support the channel and catch all our upcoming content. All right, let's dive right in.
It was one of those warm, tropical evenings in Patong, the kind where the air buzzes with an infectious energy and anticipation. The town was alive with the sounds of music and laughter spilling out from the countless bars and restaurants, and the humid air seemed to carry a promise of adventure. I was at my friend's guest house, sipping on a few drinks to warm up before heading out for the night. The guest house was a small, cozy place tucked away from the main road, a familiar spot where I often started my nights when I visited Patong. As I sat at the bar nursing a cold beer, I struck up a conversation with another guest, a German guy in his mid-20s who seemed eager to chat. He introduced himself as Eric and mentioned that this was his first time in Patong. He'd been in Thailand for only a couple of days, but the place had already captured his imagination. His eyes sparkled with a mix of curiosity and excitement as he spoke about his plans to explore as much as he could during his trip. It was clear he was looking for an adventure, and I couldn't help but feel a bit of nostalgia as I remembered my own first trip to this lively town. I suggested that Eric join me for a night out on Bangla Road, the infamous party street in Patong, known for its neon lights, pounding music, and a wild assortment of bars, clubs, and street performers. It was the kind of place where anything could happen, and I figured it would be the perfect introduction for someone as eager to experience Thailand's nightlife as Eric was. He didn't need any convincing. His face lit up with excitement, and he agreed immediately. We set off from the guest house, and as we approached Bangla Road, the buzz of the nightlife became louder and louder. The street was alive with crowds of people, tourists and locals alike, moving between bars, taking photos and soaking up the vibrant atmosphere. We started the evening slowly, hopping from bar to bar, taking in the scene. Each place had its own flavor. Some had live bands playing classic rock, others featured DJs spinning electronic music, and a few had performers putting on shows that left the crowd either cheering or cringing. The drinks flowed freely, and soon enough, Eric and I were laughing like old friends. As the night wore on, we decided it was time to up the ante. We headed to a nearby nightclub that had a particularly tempting offer. 800 baht for unlimited alcohol. Until 2 a.m. it was a deal that was hard to pass up, and we were more than ready to make the most of it. We paid our entry fee and were soon standing at the bar, taking full advantage of the offer. Drink after drink, the music seemed to grow louder and the lights brighter. The dance floor was packed, and the energy in the room was almost palpable. As we drank, the night started to blur around the edges. Faces in the crowd melted into a sea of motion, and the music seemed to pulse through my entire body. At some point, I lost track of Eric. One moment he was dancing next to me, and the next, he was gone. But in my intoxicated state, I didn't think much of it. People came and went all the time in places like this, and he was probably off having his own adventure. Not long after, a woman approached me. I noticed her out of the corner of my eye before she made her way over. She had a certain confidence in the way she moved, as if she was used to getting attention. She wasn't strikingly beautiful, but with all the alcohol in my system, I wasn't exactly picky. There was something about her that seemed charming in the moment, though looking back, I realized it was probably the haze of alcohol clouding my judgment. She wore a fitted black dress and had dark hair that fell in loose waves over her shoulders. She greeted me with a friendly smile, and we started talking. I don't remember much of what we said to each other, just our conversation was filled with the kind of flirty, nonsensical banter that happens late into a night of drinking. As the minutes passed, I found myself feeling more and more attracted to her, or at least, that's what the alcohol had me believing. After a while, I suggested that she come back to my room at the guest house with me. She didn't hesitate. She agreed with a smile, and we left the club together. When we got back to the guest house, I suddenly realized that I didn't have any condoms. I wasn't about to risk anything, so I asked her if she could go buy some from the 7-Eleven that was just across the street. She was still wearing my jacket that I had given her outside the club to cover up against the night air, and she slipped on a pair of my flip-flops that were lying by the door. I didn't think twice about it at the time. I was too intoxicated and too distracted by the fog of lust in my mind. She left the room, and I stayed behind, sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at the door in a drunken haze. It felt like only a few minutes passed before she returned, carrying a small plastic bag. She smiled as she walked back in, and I remember thinking about how quick she had been. We didn't waste any time and quickly started getting intimate, but my body had other plans. The alcohol had taken a greater toll than I realized, and halfway through, I felt myself drifting off. It wasn't long before I passed out completely. The next morning, I woke up to a pounding headache and an uneasy feeling in the pit of my stomach. I rubbed my eyes and sat up, noticing that the room was eerily quiet. She was gone. I wasn't sure when she had left, but as I scanned the room, a growing sense of dread washed over me. I reached for my bag, which I had left beside the bed. As I unzipped it and looked inside, my heart sank. I had kept 2,500 baht in my wallet for easy access, but when I checked, only 500 baht was left. I felt a cold sweat break out on my forehead as I quickly reached for the secret pocket inside my laptop bag, where I had hidden an additional 7,000 baht. That money was gone too. Altogether, 8,000 baht, almost $250, had disappeared overnight. Panic set in, and I scrambled to figure out what had happened. The realization hit me like a punch in the gut. She had stolen my money. I grabbed my phone and called my friend, who owned the guest house. I explained the situation in rushed, frantic sentences. Thankfully, he was quick to offer help. His guest house had security cameras, and he suggested we review the footage together to see if we could figure out exactly when she had left. I hurried to meet him, my mind racing with anger and regret. In the small back office, we sat down and reviewed the security footage. Sure enough, there she was, leaving the room sometime before dawn, still wearing my jacket and flip-flops. She appeared calm, almost casual, as she walked out the front door, carrying a small bag, probably with the stolen money inside. I told my friend that she had gone to the 7-Eleven before returning to the room, and he advised me to check if they had any security footage that might help. I walked over to the 7-Eleven, trying to stay calm. When I arrived, I explained the situation to the staff, who were surprisingly sympathetic. They took me to the back room to view the previous night's recordings. There she was, as clear as day, still in my jacket and flip-flops, standing at the counter paying for the condoms. She looked so composed, like she didn't have a care in the world. I asked if I could take a photo of the footage, but the staff explained that only the police could authorize that. I left the store with a heavy feeling in my chest, determined to get my money back. My friend's employee, who spoke Thai fluently, agreed to accompany me to the police station to file a report. At the station, the officer on duty listened carefully as I explained the events of the previous night, while my friend's employee translated. When I mentioned that the stolen amount was 8,000 baht, the officer raised an eyebrow. He didn't seem overly concerned, explaining that it wasn't a large amount by local standards, and suggested that I might have better luck finding the woman myself by revisiting the nightclub and the surrounding areas. His words seemed discouraging, but I wasn't ready to give up. A few days later, I returned to the nightclub alone. The bright lights and thumping music felt strangely comforting as I made my way inside, scanning the crowd for any sign of her. I didn't have high hopes, but I was determined to try. After a few minutes, I saw her, or at least, I was almost certain it was her. She was dancing near the back of the club, dressed in a different outfit, but there was no mistaking her face. My heart raced as I reached for my phone and dialed my friend's number. I told him I had found her, and he sent the same employee who had helped me at the police station. She arrived quickly, and as soon as she saw the woman, she confirmed that it was indeed her. Without wasting any time, she called the police, and a few officers arrived at the nightclub not long after. The officers approached her, and I stepped forward to confirm her identity. She looked at me with a confused expression, as if trying to remember who I was. The police took her into custody, and I followed them back to the station. There, under questioning, she initially denied everything. She insisted that she didn't know who I was and had never been to my room. Her tone was defiant, and for a moment, I worried that I had made a mistake in accusing her. But then, the officer showed her the photo taken from the 7-Eleven footage. The color drained from her face, and her defiant expression faltered. She stammered for a moment before finally admitting that she had taken the money. When the officer asked her to return it, she claimed she didn't have the money on her anymore and would need 2 or 3 days to gather the amount. The officer turned to me and asked if I was willing to wait. I agreed, though my patience was wearing thin. 3 days later, I returned to the police station. She was there, and with a resigned look on her face, she handed me 8,000 baht. I counted the money, and as I did, a strange mixture of relief and exhaustion washed over me. It was a small victory, but it felt significant after all that had happened. As a token of appreciation for my friend's employee who had helped me so much, I gave her 1,000 baht. She had gone above and beyond to assist me, and I was grateful for her support throughout the ordeal. With the matter finally resolved, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. However, the experience left me with a lingering lesson. It wasn't just the money that had bothered me. It was the feeling of being taken advantage of in such a vulnerable moment. Patong was a place of excitement and adventure, but it could also be a place where things could quickly go wrong if you weren't careful. That night, I had let my guard down in the euphoria of the moment, and I had paid the price for it. Looking back, I realized how lucky I was that the situation hadn't ended much worse. I could have lost much more than just money, or I could have found myself in even more serious trouble. It was a sobering reminder that no matter how familiar a place felt, or how lost I got in the moment, I needed to stay vigilant. As the days went on, I returned to my usual routine of exploring and enjoying everything Thailand had to offer, but I carried with me a renewed sense of caution. The bright lights of Bangalore Road still drew me in, and the nightlife remained just as lively and inviting. But now, whenever I walked down that street, I did so with my eyes wide open, always aware of the fine line between a night of fun and a night of regret. In the end, what happened to me in Patong wasn't an unusual story. It was a tale that could have happened to anyone, anywhere in the world where adventure, alcohol, and chance encounters came together. But for me, it was a story that taught me a valuable lesson about trust, temptation, and the importance of staying grounded, even when the world around me seemed to spin out of control.
All right, guys, thanks for tuning in and hearing the story. What are your thoughts on what went down? Have you ever found yourself in a tricky situation while traveling? Share your stories in the comments. I'd love to hear them. And if you enjoyed this tale, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more adventures. Until next time, keep having fun, but stay safe.